Imagine a country as vast and diverse as India. Now, imagine it trying to ensure every single one of its hundreds of millions of children and adults gets quality education, regardless of where they live, regardless of their background.
It's a massive ambition, truly massive.
And technology is right at the heart of this transformation. So today we're doing a deep dive into how India is tackling the digital divide. That gap between those who have tech access and those who don't, especially in education. We'll look at open and distance learning, ODL practices, and the big vision in the National Education Policy 2020.
Yeah, the NEP 2020 is quite something.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack insights from a few key sources: a research paper on ODL, a study looking specifically at the digital divide for school kids in a place called Bolpur, and the NEP 2020 document itself.
Okay.
We want to pull out the most important bits to show you how India is working towards education that's equitable, high quality, and, well, ready for the future.
So let's start with that term, the digital divide. What does it really mean in this context?
At its simplest, it's the gap, right? The haves with tech and internet, and the have-nots without.
But it became incredibly stark during the pandemic, didn't it?
Exactly. When schools shut down across India, suddenly everyone needed online learning. It wasn't optional anymore.
And the scale was just enormous. You mentioned a UNESCO report.
Yeah, it stayed over 320 million students in India were affected by closures. And the real tragedy, it hit marginalized communities hardest. They lost out the most.
Absolutely. The core issues just jumped out. Lack of reliable, high-speed internet, not enough devices, especially for poorer families, and then deeper disparities linked to income, education levels, even just basic awareness of how to use the tech.
So students from these backgrounds, they just couldn't really access or use the digital tools effectively. They were getting left behind.
It was a huge, huge problem laid bare.
So seeing this massive challenge, what did India do? This sounds like a situation crying out for something different, something revolutionary.
And that's where open and distance learning, ODL, really stepped up. It wasn't new, but it became crucial. It offered a way to get around geographical barriers, the lack of physical schools in some areas, and that uneven resource distribution.
So it was already kind of there, but the pandemic gave it a massive push.
Precisely. And you have major players like the Indira Gandhi National Open University, IGNOU. It's been a pioneer, reaching millions, including people in really remote or disadvantaged areas.
How did they manage that scale?
Well, a big part of it is their use of innovative methods, like open educational resources, OER.
OER, so free learning materials?
Essentially, yes. High-quality textbooks, videos, course materials, all freely accessible online. It bypasses traditional publishing costs and models, making education much more affordable and, well, democratic. It's about getting quality content out there to everyone.
Okay, so ODL and OER provide the access to the materials. But how do you ensure quality? It's not just about throwing stuff online, right?
Not at all. And the research highlights a quality framework for ODL. It kind of breaks it down into three main parts: inputs, processes, and outputs.
Inputs, processes, outputs. Okay, what do those mean in practice?
So inputs are the basics, the syllabus, the curriculum, the actual content. Pretty straightforward.
Right.
The processes part is more dynamic. It's about the teaching philosophy, the methods used, how students are supported and advised, how regional centers connect, the delivery mechanisms, learner support systems, basically everything involved in the doing of education.
And the outputs. That's the result.
Exactly. That's how you measure success. Number of graduates, pass rates, completion rates, whether people go on to further studies. It creates accountability.
So it's a whole system designed for quality. Now, within that system, where are the really exciting innovations happening?
Well, they fall into a few key areas. First, you've got technological innovations. We're talking AI, virtual reality, augmented reality being integrated into ODL.
AI and VR in distance learning. How does that work?
Think about subjects like science, engineering, STEM fields, things that often need hands-on labs. VR can simulate experiments. AR can overlay information onto the real world. It makes abstract stuff much more concrete, especially if you can't physically be in a lab.
Wow, okay. That opens up possibilities. What else?
Then there are pedagogical innovations. This is about how teaching happens, moving away from just lectures to more learner-centered, interactive, inclusive methods.
Like what?
A big one is personalized learning paths. Using algorithms, AI adapts the learning to the individual student's pace, goals, learning style. It recommends resources, gives feedback, offers support tailored just for them.
So it's not one size fits all anymore.
Exactly, which is vital in a country as diverse as India. Then you have institutional innovations. This is more about the structure and partnerships.
Okay.
We already mentioned OER, open educational resources. Making quality materials free and accessible is a huge institutional shift.
Right, cutting costs and barriers.
And then MOOC's massive open online courses. ODL institutions are partnering with platforms that host courses from top universities worldwide. Suddenly, learners in India can access courses from, say, Harvard or MIT, often for free or low cost. It expands horizons massively.
That's incredible access.
We're also seeing blended learning models, combining the best of online and face-to-face. Maybe online lectures and readings done asynchronously at the student's own pace.
And then using in-person time or live online sessions for discussion, problem solving, group work.
Precisely, like the flipped classroom model. And there are initiatives like Project Shiksha, which focuses specifically on getting ICT information and communication tech into classrooms, training teachers, helping develop digital curriculum, providing actual hardware.
So it's building the capacity within schools too.
Yeah, it's a multi-pronged approach.
This whole evolving landscape of ODL and innovation really sets the stage for the National Education Policy 2020, the NEP. You said it's quite something.
It really is. It's India's first education policy for the 21st century, designed to tackle the country's specific development needs. The ambition is staggering.
What's the core vision?
The stated aim is for India's education system to be second to none by 2040, providing equitable, high-quality education for everyone. It explicitly ties into the UN's Sustainable Development Goal for inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning for all by 2030.
Wow. Second to none by 2040.
And interestingly, it draws parallels with India's ancient universities like Takshashila and Nalanda, centers of learning known for their multidisciplinary approach thousands of years ago. The policy aims to recapture that spirit, but for the modern world.
That's a fascinating link to the past. How does this huge vision translate into actual changes on the ground? What are the big shifts?
Well, a fundamental one is moving away from rote memorization. The focus is now on critical thinking, creativity, problem-solving, adaptability skills needed for today's world.
That sounds good, but how do you actually do that?
A big part is changing the structure. The old 10+2 school system is replaced by a new 5+3+3+4 structure. It covers ages 3 to 18, broken into foundational, preparatory, middle, and secondary stages.
A whole new structure. And I read something about foundational skills.
Yes, foundational literacy and numeracy (FLN) is declared an urgent national mission. The goal is universal FLN in primary school by 2025 and all students achieving it by grade 3.
2025 for universal FLN. That sounds incredibly ambitious.
It is. It requires massive effort, teacher training, new materials, focused interventions. Another huge goal is tackling dropout rates, aiming for 100% gross enrollment ratio from preschool to secondary level by 2030.
100% enrollment. Considering the current situation, I think the source mentioned over half drop out before finishing higher secondary.
Yeah, the GER for grades 11-12 was cited around 56.5%. So aiming for 100% across the board by 2030 is transformative.
How does the policy plan to achieve that, especially for marginalized groups?
That's a core focus. It specifically targets support for socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, or SEDGs. That includes gender girls, transgender students, various sociocultural identities like SC, ST, OBC, minorities, geographical groups from rural areas, small towns, and also persons with disabilities.
So real targeted inclusion.
Yes, with concrete steps like a gender inclusion fund, providing assistive devices for students with disabilities, making sure policies align with disability rights legislation. It's about actively removing barriers.
And what about the teachers? You can't change education without changing teaching.
Absolutely critical. The NEP talks about restoring the high status of teachers, but crucially, it mandates comprehensive training for teachers, specifically in online and digital education.
That makes sense. Teaching online isn't the same as in a classroom.
Exactly. Even great teachers need new skills, new pedagogical approaches for the digital space. The policy also pushes for a new standard 4-year integrated BEd degree by 2030 and emphasizes continuous professional development. Teachers need ongoing support.
Okay, so the policy is comprehensive on curriculum, structure, inclusion, teachers. What about the technology infrastructure itself?
Big focus there, too. It calls for a National Educational Technology Forum, NETF, an autonomous body to guide tech use in education, share ideas, advise based on evidence, and look into emerging tech like AI.
So a dedicated body for educational tech strategy.
Yes, and it emphasizes the need for open, interoperable digital infrastructure. Platforms like Diksha and Swayam are key. They provide quality e-content resources for teachers. There's also a plan to get digital devices, like tablets with preloaded content, into the hands of students and teachers in those disadvantaged groups.
Bridging the actual device gap, too.
Trying to, yes. But the policy is also cautious. It recommends pilot studies for online learning to figure out what works best and avoid downsides, like, kids getting addicted to screens.
A balanced approach, then, not just tech for tech's sake.
Right. It strongly advocates for blended models, recognizing face-to-face learning is still vital. It's about finding the right mix.
And assessment. If you change teaching, you have to change testing, right?
Absolutely. New bodies like Paracox, the National Assessment Center, are tasked with creating new assessment frameworks, moving away from just testing memory recall towards assessing those 21st century skills, critical thinking, analysis, problem solving, often using online tools.
It all sounds incredibly thorough on paper, a massive blueprint for change.
Yeah.
But what about the reality? You mentioned that study in Bolpur earlier.
Yes, and that's the crucial counterpoint. The Bolper study really highlighted the gap between policy ambition and on-the-ground reality. Despite the potential of online learning, it found effectiveness was severely hampered by things like low income, poor internet, lack of devices.
What are the numbers again?
It found 70% of the school students surveyed didn't have proper tech access, and 20% were relying entirely on their parents' mobile phones, often shared. So the conclusion was pretty stark. For these students, online classes were not that much effective. The basic infrastructure just wasn't there.
That's a serious reality check. It brings us back to those persistent challenges. The infrastructure gaps, creating engaging online content, ensuring quality, keeping students motivated.
It's the practical implementation challenge, but this is where those ODL innovations offer a path. Using OER effectively, setting up local study centers for support, working with communities, targeted help for marginalized groups.
And using things like flipped classrooms, collaborative online projects to make it more engaging.
Exactly. Those pedagogical shifts are key to making it work, even with limitations.
So looking forward, what's the ultimate vision? Does the NEP see ODL and online learning becoming normal?
Very much so. The vision is to merge ODL and online programs seamlessly with mainstream education, and to really leverage AI and machine learning for that personalized learning we talked about, but on a national scale.
And beyond K-12, what about higher education and research?
Big plans there, too. The policy talks about creating multidisciplinary education and research universities. MII is designed to be on par with the world-class IITs and IMs, but across all disciplines.
Fostering top-tier research across the board.
Yes, with a goal to significantly boost investment in research way above the current levels. And there's a strong push for vocational education, too, equipping every child with at least one practical skill, challenging the old view that vocational training is somehow lesser than academic study.
Making education more relevant to employment needs.
Precisely. And overseeing all this, especially in higher education, will be a new regulatory body, the Higher Education Commission of India, HECI. The aim is transparency, accountability, and consistent quality across all institutions, public and private.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. From the challenge of the digital divide through the evolution of ODL and its innovations to this incredibly ambitious national education policy. It really touches everything: curriculum, teachers, technology, access, quality.
It really does. And what's perhaps most fascinating is that holistic view. It's not just about handing out tablets. It's about fundamentally rethinking education, making it more flexible, more personalized, more skills-focused, and interestingly, trying to connect it back to India's own cultural and intellectual traditions.
Yeah, that idea of transforming ancient principles into
Yeah.
modern digital teaching methods, that's quite a concept. Aiming for a system where lifelong learning isn't just a buzzword, but a reality for everyone.
That seems to be the goal.
So let's leave our listeners with this. If India manages to pull this off, if it successfully transforms its education system using technology and its unique strengths, bridging that digital divide on such a massive scale, what kind of ripple effect could that have globally? What might the world learn from India's educational transformation?